I'm pleased to see the extension cords here, having barber shop in here this morning for several reasons. And one is sort of bittersweet and a little sad that you think about, when you think about the barber shop and you think about Jim Glenn and Doc Erickson and Michael Coleman and Chuck Mason. But it makes me think, if there's barbershop in heaven, and I feel like there is, then we got something to look forward to yet, you know. But my other reason for enjoying that is being right here. And during the hymns that were sung, these guys right here, these four right here, I didn't even want to sing myself because I wanted to hear them sing. And so there's multiple reasons for appreciating barber shop in here today. And it ain't over yet, no. So I'll get through as quick as I can. Besides, I've been warned by a lot of people that the open tournament is still going on in the and plus we always like to get the Red Lobster before the Baptists do. So I don't know how many remember Eugene Dunn, who was district superintendent for a while, and that's when I really, got to know folks in the district, and there's a couple of stories that stand out in my mind, especially when you come and fill them in for somebody else. And preachers tell stories about each other that are not only irreverent, but usually without any regard to fact. But he told this story when Eugene first came to the district, that he wanted to preach in every church. I think there was 99 churches now, maybe wrong, maybe way off with that number, but I think he wanted to preach in every pulpit, within the first 6 or 8 months. And so we established a plan to do that. And this story comes out of the Bogart Church, where Kathy and I, Bonnie and Brian, were at the Bogart Church at that time. And Jeff Stone was our minister. Eugene came out there to preach. He met with Jeff back in the pastor's study. And then they came out about 11 o'clock and came and sat in 2 chairs. And there was an exceptionally low number of people in the congregation, less than 10, 8 or 9 people in there, according to the story now. And 2 or 3 minutes after 11, there still was nobody there. And Eugene allegedly bent over to Jeff and said, "You did tell your people I was coming today, didn't you?" He said, "No, I really didn't, but it looks like word got out anyway." and so I can't help but think that, it wasn't planned for me to be here today, but if word got out that I was coming and you still showed up, I really appreciate every one of you. And when the preacher called and said she wasn't feeling well, I looked at the lectionary, at the common lectionary suggestion, and it comes out of the 18th chapter of Genesis, first 10 verses. And I said, yep, I think that's what I'll do. So let me read those first 10 verses out of Genesis 18. The Lord appeared to Abraham by the terebinth trees of Mamre, that's oaks, of Mamre. Abraham was sitting in the front door in the heat of the day, cooling himself. So he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing by him in the yard. And when he saw them, he ran from the house to meet them, and he bowed himself to the ground. He said, "My Lord, if I have now found favor in your sight, do not pass on by your servant. Please let a little water be brought. We will wash your feet and rest ourselves under the tree, and I will bring a morsel of bread, and that you may refresh your hearts. After that you may pass by, inasmuch as you have come to your servant." And they said, "Yes, do as you have said." Never want to refuse a meal, do you? So Abraham hastened into the house with Sarah and said, "Quickly, make ready 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd, and took a tender and good calf, and gave it to his young lad, and he hastened to prepare it. So he took butter and milk, and the calf which he had prepared, and set it before them. He stood by them under the tree as they ate. Then they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "She is here in the tent." And he said, "I will certainly return to you according to the proper time of life, and behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son." And Sarah was listening in the tent door, which was behind him. And I'm sure there must have been a little bit of lag time after that, when a few seconds went by, and Sarah said, "Wait, what?" What didn't he tell him I'm 90? But that's actually a part of the next lesson. But I do recall, and I don't want to be a spoiler about what goes on with the next lesson, but I do recall that when she heard that being said about her, that she laughed. But she laughed within herself. She didn't laugh out loud. And we've already determined that of these 3 visitors that have showed up in his yard, they are sent from heaven. They are supernatural visitors. And he has already identified one of them as Jehovah, the Lord God of heaven, is one of these 3 visitors. And so when that Jehovah said that she laughed, that's when we look in the next lesson. We are really amazed, because that's when we learn for certain, if we didn't already know it, that God hears all of the thoughts and issues that go on silently within us. God hears our very thoughts inside of us. And I got to tell you, sometimes that's not real comforting, is it? But let's deal with what we got here, because like I said, I've been warned by some other guys here. You know? So Jehovah appeared to Abraham in the oaks of Mamre. That's a wonderful sort of a designation of a place. It's got these terebinth trees. You know, that's these. I think it's called Quercus ixla or something like that, but who cares? They're just great big oak trees that have a wonderful canopy, great big thick canopy, wonderful shade, and so that's where they have an arbor outside, built up outside for them to eat. And so Abraham is just sitting in the door there at midday. Likely, right about midday. It's a little bit warm, and so he's just protecting himself from the heat with a little gentle breeze that comes into the door. And all of a sudden, 3 men appear out in the yard. And he's been looking around. He looked past them to all of the other areas in the meadows. They're in a remote area, you know. He didn't see them before. And all of a sudden, they appear. Now that's a clue to us that they are sent from heaven. They don't necessarily need to traverse, you know, certain areas and get on the interstate and stuff. They can be where they are and then where you are. Now, he was so excited. It's really a little bit surprising that he got so worked up about these visitors being out there. He jumped up off his stool and ran towards them and suddenly stopped and bowed himself to where his whole upper body was horizontal with the ground and face to the ground. Now, if you've read any of Genesis before, especially in the 13th and 14th in that area, you know that Abraham is not a stranger to the God of heaven. And the Lord God is not a stranger to Abraham. They have developed this rapport, if you will. And so it's not surprising, it's not even remarkable that he recognized God in this group of angels who, and I don't know, I wish I did know what everybody's notion of, you know, angels, what your belief system is, how much they appear to us and how they put themselves into the form of a human. And And there's nothing that they can't do, and so that's what they do, is put themselves into the form of a human, and there's three of them. And it's really comical the way all of the commentators and the lexicon writers and things talk about who the other two are, It's just funny. Everybody's got his own opinion about who those other two are. But that's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They are angels, and that's all there is to it. They are angels come from heaven, and the God of heaven, the Lord God, Jehovah, Yahweh himself, is one of them. And so that's more than just, we got company. This is really an exciting time together. I mean, the first thing he would say, hey, we got company, Sterling, and he goes up there. Then he realizes this, oh, no, this is much more than that. So he addressed the one that he knew as Jehovah. And he says, if I have found favor in your sight, I beg you not to pass on, but rather stay here and let me make you comfortable for a while. I'm going to get me a pail of water and we wash your feet over here, and we'll fix you something to eat. And they said, we just noted that a while ago. They said, okay, sure, yeah. So we sat him down in the shade of this big oak tree, and he hustled in and told Sarah to measure out some meal, and we've got some important guests to make 3 cakes for them. Then he ran out the back door into the pasture, and he chose this nice little calf, and he gave it to one of his lads there with instructions to process it. And I'm sure some of the other farmhands out there, what's all this running around about? And Abraham says, we got company. Now hasten to what I'm asking you to do. Now you think about this for just a little while, because the next verse says he brought food out there to him. You don't get that stuff prepared that quickly, and it's really strange, it's really unusual that you're going to invite them to stay for a meal, and you haven't really prepared it yet. You go and get this meal and start, and of course you got to build a fire. You don't have a fire already because it's warm. You got to butcher this calf and let the hands do that. Well, so these got to be the most patient guests you've ever had. They're sitting out there waiting. And it reminds me of something my brother said one time when he said he went to this restaurant in South Georgia that was famous for fresh food, and he ordered catfish, and he said he saw the cook running out the back door with a rod and reel. So you're preparing this when your guests are around, and that's really, really cool. I'm thinking when we were kids growing up in Lithonia, if you know Lithonia, we grew up in rural Lithonia. Our preacher did too, by the way. She went to the same high school that I did several decades later. But we used to, it was so remote out where we were, you hardly ever saw anybody. If you did see somebody that hesitated at the driveway, you'd yell, we got company. Now this will knock your hat in the creek, but I was one of the shyest persons you've ever met. And my older brother was too, and if we got company, we're gonna retreat to the back of the house or the backyard or something. But my sister next to me and my younger brother Mac next to her, they were the gregarious ones in the family. They would do like Abraham did. They would run out to him, and bow to him maybe even, and ask him to stay for a meal and stuff like that, And now that was back in 1950, so it was okay to approach strangers, I guess, back then. Anyway, what did I do? Did I get off of the subject? Now, Abraham and Sarah, we have determined that quite a while back, were known as well-to-do. They had a nice big place, good fence, they had livestock, and things were going well for them. And yet, their formal dining room is a little arbor out in the shade of an oak tree. But that really worked out well too, The visitors relaxed out there while they were waiting. Finally, he brings them the food. He gets some butter and some milk with the bread and the veal, and he brings it out there to them, and they certainly enjoyed a wonderful lunch. And I don't know if you noticed this in reading it in the passage, but he stood there waiting on them while they ate. He stood in the shade of the tree to take care of their needs. He refilled their milk glass. He brought them more bread, more butter if you need it. Now, that to me is maybe one of the most remarkable parts of this whole passage, because even though it's early yet in the Old Testament, that's Christ-like, isn't it? Making himself a servant to take care of other people. One spoke to him after they got through eating and said, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" "Oh, she's right in the house." And it was Jehovah that said that. He said, "When the time is right, I'm going to return." And so he had this agenda, and he says, and I will say the things that have been planned by us, and your wife Sarah will have a son. That's when she laughed. But you know, it's not the first time. Again, if you go back and read 13 and 14 along in there, Abraham has met with God before, and Abraham has said, "This is part of my plan for you and for your seed and your generations from now on and on and on." So there's this great plan. And he said, "I have no son." He said, "You will. Your wife will bear a son." And so that comes into the next issue. Our assignment for the passage for the lectionary ends right here. This is all that we have, and we have to just sort of take a quick look at what we got. We've got angels, we've got heavenly beings coming and appearing to somebody. And there's only one reason for their visit. And they give that reason after they've had a wonderful meal, you know. But that's what angels do. Angels appear. And then there's something that happens about your life that's changed now and later and sometimes forever. I want to ask a question. If anybody read this wonderful book out of 1950 by Dale Evans called Angel Unaware, raise your hand if you read it. Good. I want a few more to read that. If I ask that again, I want some more to read. A wonderful book about a child that they had, this little girl they had, Robin Elizabeth. And she was born with Down syndrome, and she didn't even live 2 years, but she had such an unbelievable impact upon them, their lives, and their relationship with each other, their relationship with God, and then the activism that they got into after that to help take care of things, to help people that had children with special needs and things, you know. And because here's an angel that came to them unaware. And the story is told like what Robin might have told the story from heaven. And the things that she said. I'm not kidding you. It's a wonderful book. So you think about that sometime this week. Don't try for the hard copy edition because it's over $100 now. But get you a what do you call it? Paperback. Couldn't think of the word. Get you a paperback and read that. And next time I ask it, I want some more hands to come up. Okay? The Statler Brothers. You know the Statler Brothers? That's one of my favorites. They have this song about recognizing Jesus. And there's two of the lines in there that says, "Would you recognize Jesus if you met him face to face? Or would you wonder if it's still someone you couldn't place? He may not be coming in a chariot of the Lord. Jesus could be riding in a 49 Ford." And I got to tell you, that they don't ride them like that. They just don't. I just think, well, anyway. Now, I've got a story from out of 1985 when I was a chaplain at Athens General Hospital, and that'll take you back. I've been agonizing over, should I tell this story? I don't want to seem too self-serving, but I do want to tell it. I do want to tell this story. I had finished my initial basic training as a chaplain and the clinicals that go along with it, very intense. And so the next year, which was 1985, I was certified as a chaplain. There were 5 of us that provided pastoral care at Athens General. And naturally, you took turns taking calls, so we wanted there to be coverage around the clock. And when you had your nighttime overnight call, you would take a little bit of compensatory time off and then come and prepare to just be there. And this one particular night, it started at 5:30, and I got a call, a code. You know the code 99? We got a code 99, and I had to go and see about that and visit with the family and give some support, some pastoral care, and some prayer time. And then one followed another and another. There was 9 such calls during that night. And I got to tell you, the memory of that still makes me just totally exhausted. It was just really devastating. It was close to 5 o'clock in the morning when it seemed to get quiet, and I was so wired I couldn't get in the car and drive home. Then I said, I need to just decompress, I guess is the word. So I stopped suddenly. I said, I think I'll go to the nursery and look through the glass at the babies. That'll have to help some. And just, 2.5 years before that, we had done that with our own little Wani Jean. And so I thought, yeah, there's something about looking through the glass at the babies. And sure enough, I felt myself being decompressed. And then a male voice said to me, and I had no idea anybody else was in there. I did not notice another person. But this voice says to me, you got a new baby? I said, no. I'm just coming here to look. I said, I work here. He said, oh, you work here? What do you do? I said, I'm a chaplain. He said, oh. And he got so disconcerted about that. Oh my goodness, like his hamburger bun was soggy. And he says to me, don't talk any of your God talk to me. And I said, well, I really wasn't going to, but when I asked you why. He said, I just don't want it. He said, I don't believe in God anymore, and I'm really happy that I've decided that I don't believe in God. I said, okay. Now, I had heard at our course of study at Emory, this one professor one time said that a good counter to that would be to ask somebody, tell me what God it is you don't believe. And it may be one I have trouble with too. So I said, I'm going to try that. And I did. It didn't work. This carotid came all the way out. You know what I'm talking about. He said, that God that's in your head, and he actually touched me on the forehead with his finger, that God that's in your head. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, all right. I won't try that again. And so, but we had a real cordial conversation. He had a new grandson, and he was telling me about his grandson, and we talked. We talked about babies, and we talked about hospital care, and like I said, a real cordial conversation. And then we parted on good terms. I wish you well. Okay, goodbye. Now, this was probably 6 months later. I was on duty on the 4th floor, and a nurse from another floor approached me and said, do you know name? And I said, no, I can't think. She said, he was here several months ago, and you met him at the nursery window. I said, oh my goodness, yeah. She said, he's in the hospital and he's sick. He's here as a patient and he requests that you come down and see him. So I'll do that. So I went down to see him, and it was really a good reunion. We talked about things. And the crux of his conversation was, do you think I could get that God that's in your head into my head? I said, yeah, I know you can. It's really simple. I said, we can talk about that. Yes, I'm glad. His wife was there, and so it was truly a remarkable and just really meaningful time together. We had some conversation. We talked about belief. He asked me if I thought it was too late, and I told him, no, I like this story of the people that came to the vineyard in Matthew, and when some came late, they still got paid the same amount. Now, some people were upset about that, but God works that way, So you're a little bit late. We're good, and they like that. His wife especially. I just can't say enough about how meaningful that approach was. And so we again left on good terms, and the inevitable happened. It wasn't too long after that he died, but we felt good that he died knowing the Lord, and that he was ready. He was ready. And I know that because I stayed in touch with his wife some. In fact, I still do on Facebook. Occasionally we'll talk on Facebook, If that's the same as staying in touch. I guess it is. Sometimes it is. You do. So I was very pleased about that. Now I got only one reason. I did not want to be self-serving, but I wanted to give you that story to tell you that sometimes angels appear to us, but sometimes God appears in us and has us be the messenger to somebody else. So it's not always the angels ruling ours. It's always sometimes, not always, but sometimes us, because God speaks to us and speaks to other people through us. You may be the messenger for somebody else's sake. Okay? God bless us, everyone. Amen.